on our way. Great. So good morning. Thank you all for joining us on a Monday morning at 9 a.m. here in Pullman, Washington. So yeah, welcome to our 8th Global Cougs Speaker Series presentation. The Global Cougs Speaker Series gives individuals from WSU and around the world a platform to share thought-provoking stories, experiences, and projects that are global in nature. Speaker Series talks are for everyone in the WSU community. However, if you're a student, you can also attend the Speaker Series talks like this one today as one of your 3 elective experiences required for each of the Global Cougs digital badges. Today, Dr. Beem's presentation will explore themes related to the Personal and Social Responsibility badge and the Knowledge Application badge. It will also be recorded and shared on our Digital Badge Connect database, where you can find other elective experience opportunities. If you'd like to participate in the digital badge program or have questions about it, please feel free to join us at our weekly info sessions every Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. So it's now time to hand the reins over to Dr. Heather Beem, founder of Practical Education Network and engineering faculty member at Ashesi University. Her talk will be around 40 minutes or so, and we'll have time at the end for some questions. So Heather, feel free to take it away.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning and happy Monday to all of you. I'm looking forward to sharing my perspective and my experience with STEM education, especially through my 5 years that I've been in Ghana, West Africa now. And I really look forward to hearing whatever questions and comments you'd like to bring up as well. So as Jacob said, my name is Heather. I'm from the US originally, but I've been living in Ghana for a few years now. And I was brought here thanks to a passion for STEM education. So I'd love to share a little bit about my own background and my own experience and how that has informed my journey to this point. So I grew up in Oklahoma, went to undergrad there, like all public school through K-12 and then undergrad at Oklahoma State University. My mom is from Taiwan, so my siblings and I would spend some of our summers in Taiwan visiting my grandmother and our family there. And my mom, who's a former teacher, she took education very seriously. So she forced me and my siblings to go to school in Taiwan, even though it was supposed to be our summer break. But it was really good. It was a great experience for us to kind of be thrust into a new educational environment. You know, suddenly we were in school where you had to wear uniforms, where you really had to follow rules. And it just, you know, from a young age, opened my eyes to how different educational experiences for students can be. I wasn't thinking about education so much in the front of my mind while I was growing up. I rapidly drew interest in mathematics, especially as I was in school. And then right after I finished high school, I got to go to one of these free summer camps where they exposed us to robotics, high school students to robotics and some other engineering stuff. And that really got me excited about engineering. So I ended up pursuing engineering. And education was, like I said, not at the front of my mind, but in hindsight, it was really formative. It was a really formative piece of building, you know, who I am, having these varied experiences from Oklahoma to Taiwan. And then while I was in undergrad, I also got to participate in a study abroad in Germany, which I'm sure since you guys are on this call, you're all interested in that sort of thing, study abroad. And that was another really, you know, key piece informing how I viewed education. I, you know, was doing pretty well in terms of with grades in my undergrad, but then when I went to Germany, I realized that the way that they taught was so different. You had to be really independent in the way you thought and went about your work. You know, there weren't assignments, there wasn't hand-holding along the way throughout the semester. And so that was another sort of really different experience in learning and teaching as I was, you know, progressing through my own educational career. So after I finished my undergrad, I was fortunate to get admission to MIT for graduate school, where I continued with mechanical engineering as I had done my first degree in. And I spent about 6 years there, went all the way through the PhD program. And my time at MIT was quite formative for where I've ended up now. And there's a few reasons for that. So while I was doing my graduate studies, I was doing, in one sense, fairly traditional mechanical engineering research, specifically in fluid mechanics. And I got to study some really cool cutting edge stuff, especially looking at how animals do interesting things in the marine world and designing technology that's inspired by what we see that animals have evolved to figure out in terms of propulsion, in terms of sensing, things that we can infuse into new robotic technologies for humans to design. So on the one hand, I was diving deep into these cutting edge engineering research topics. But at the other side, I was at MIT for 6 years, so it was a long time, and I got to explore a lot of other things while I was there too. And one thing that really stood out for me in the culture, in the ethos of MIT, is this maker movement, maker style to doing things. As you walk around the institution, you just have this sense that people are trying things, they're building projects, they're testing things out. And I really got drawn into that, started working on a lot of projects myself. And along the way, that led me to form this question, which sort of became a culmination of all these different educational experiences I had had in my life. And the question was, how can we help students around the world get to access really hands-on project-based education? Because from my, I haven't been to every country and every experience in the world, but from my few sets of experiences, what I experienced at MIT, this very hands-on project-based thing, cultivated a sort of exploratory sense in everybody, this sense that anything can be done, anything can be tried. And that struck me as something that every student should have the opportunity to get to access for themselves. So that led me to look at Africa as the continent that, in some sense, could most benefit from new and improved educational experiences. And through my connections at MIT, I and some other folks started just basically calling and emailing people in Africa, at schools in Africa, and seeing who would respond and who was willing to let me and some other, young crazy people try out their project with their school. And so we reached out to a few different folks on the continent, and thanks to the strong connections that MIT has with some networks in Ghana ended up being the place where I could most readily make connections and get a positive response from people who were just like, okay, sure, let's try out your ideas. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Ghana. In case you don't know much about it yet. I didn't before I moved here. And then after that, I'll tell you about how I ended up deciding to move here permanently and end up starting an organization in STEM education. So Ghana is in the western part of Africa. It's right along the coast. And it was actually the first sub-Saharan African country to achieve independence. That was in 1957. And so Ghana was the first country to achieve independence. It was also the first stop for Europeans to come for trade, which ranged from gold to slaves. Ghana was formerly known as the Gold Coast. It's very rich in natural resources. So Ghana became a very prominent place in various ways, both for European presence, but also thanks to some strong leadership, especially through the gentleman named Kwame Nkrumah, who's pictured here, who was a very, very, very much a visionary and Pan-Africanist. He led Ghana to its independence, and about 30 other African countries ended up following suit, thanks to that leadership, seeing what was possible in Ghana. So for some statistics, Ghana has about 30 million people. And in terms of area, I tried to think of some kind of comparison with where you guys are. And when I looked at the square kilometers, Ghana is about the same square kilometer as Oregon. So it's a little bit bigger than Washington State, where you guys are. The official language is English because it was a former British colony, but there are a lot of local languages, Tree being one of the most common ones. And the GDP is quite low compared to what we experience in the Western world. According to this source that I've listed there, it's just about $4,000 GDP per capita. Here are a few pictures of Ghana. Ghana has a rich cultural history. On the top left is the Asante Hene. That's the king of the Ashanti Kingdom, which was pre-colonial times a really dominant force in West Africa. And Ghana still has the traditional chiefs holding a lot of power, even more so than the president in some cases. So these local chiefs really play a major role in society here. I've included a picture of Accra, which is the capital where I live. So as you can maybe see from the picture, it's developing rapidly. There are a lot of buildings coming up. In the 5 years I've been here, a lot of buildings have been coming up. So the city is densely populated, but then there's also vast swaths of beautiful nature outside of the city around the whole country. If you want to see more pictures and insights on Ghana and Africa, these are a few Instagram folks that I recommend. The first two that I listed there are Ghanaians. The first one both takes beautiful pictures and writes really compelling stories in his captions. And then the third one is capturing pictures from various countries in Africa. So I know there are a lot of narratives that we hear in the West about Africa, and I think it's interesting, to hear pictures and stories from the source. So when it comes to education in Ghana, here are a few things to kind of center us. So in Ghana, education is taken very seriously. About 25% of the country's budget is spent on education. And when we look at statistics like literacy, it's relatively high, especially when you compare it to the region, the West Africa region. Adult literacy is about 80%. And when it comes to school enrollment, it's quite high, again, especially compared to other countries in the region. Ghana is kind of leading the way in a lot of ways in education. Senior high school was made free about 3 years ago, and that has increased access for a lot of students who previously would just drop out after middle school. Despite all of the emphasis that people place on education, both at the national level, but at the family level, where education is also highly prioritized, the reality remains that resources are quite limited, and learning outcomes are quite low, especially compared to what people actually hope and aim for. So, unfortunately, especially outside of the cities, a lot of public schools really lack resources. Sometimes there's not enough desks, there's not enough textbooks. And so you can imagine when it comes to STEM, it can feel really daunting for teachers to transform this classroom into a really lively place for STEM learning. So just to connect these two strands a little bit, myself and then Ghana, about halfway through my time as a graduate student, I was developing this interest in Africa and these questions around what education can look like based on my varied experiences in different parts of the world. Really came together to me deciding to form PEN as a full-on side project, if you can call it that way. And so I came to Ghana for the first time in 2011. Spent a few weeks with the students in the picture here, high school students in a small town in the western region of Ghana, and we built a lot of cool engineering projects, including this wind turbine made from scrap materials. And it was a thoroughly, engaging and exciting experience for me and for the students as well. But when I went back to the U.S., what I was left with was really this sense that, the education statistics that I'd been reading about, were no longer just statistics. They were real for me. These are real people behind the numbers whose lives are directly affected by the level of access that they have to educational opportunities. And it really hit home for me that, me being in the US, I'm in the minority with what kind of education access I have. And then being at MIT, I'm in even the more extreme minority compared to the reality that millions and millions of children around the world have as they go through school. And so this led me to start to build a desire to do something. And especially my Christian faith started coming to the fore and compelling me to apply whatever skills I had. So I started to try to look beyond just myself and see how I could also serve others. So one specific way I found that I could do this was to start a class at MIT. I was fortunate to be able to work with a great team and put together a class specifically on education so that more students in the Boston area could learn how they could come together and tackle some of these really deep challenges that we face globally with education. And I'm happy to say that that class is still running to this day. In 2016, after I graduated, I realized that I was sort of at this crossroads where I could, continue on with any number of traditional paths in industry or academia, or I could try and pursue this thing that I had been going to Ghana and testing the waters for, and there seemed to be a lot of interest and momentum around. By 2016, I had come to Ghana maybe 3 times, had run a variety of trainings with teachers, now being the focus, and just sensing this really strong interest from the whole range of stakeholders around what we had to offer. And so I also felt that if I had any gift available to provide, then the least I could do was to try. The least I could do was to try and put that into practice. So after, it wasn't an easy choice, but after deciding to fully step into this, I moved here in 2016 and launched Practical Education Network, which is a nonprofit registered in Ghana. So I'm going to tell you about the work that Penn is doing. So the specific challenge that Penn is addressing is this phrase that gets spoken a lot. If any of you on this call know any Ghanaians, ask them if they know this phrase, and I'm 100% sure they will tell you that they know this phrase. So this phrase is chew and pour, pass and forget. So it's this very visceral picture of what students experience as they go through school. So they feel that they're being asked to chew information, which is to repeat and memorize information over and over again, and then pour it out, spit it back up, specifically on the exam, which they're just aiming to pass. And then, that information is out of their system and they just move on with their life. Very little of the information that feels like it's retained or useful to them. So unfortunately, this is the reality for many Ghanaian students as they go through school. And when we looked at the STEM challenge specifically through some surveys that we conducted with a few hundred Ghanaian junior high school science teachers, we found that less than 10% of their public schools had any equipment at all. I mean, I'm talking a single piece of anything you could name. And furthermore, only about 5% of the teachers we asked had attended any training to help them overcome this resource challenge. So the result is that teachers feel their hands are tied, and while they might appreciate practical hands-on approaches, they just feel like there's nothing else that they can do. And so the result is that we have in Ghana tens of millions of children, but globally hundreds of millions of children who are sitting in school, but unfortunately not actually learning anything significant. So the mission that Practical Education Network has is to enable every African child to learn by doing. Rather than chew and pour, rather than memorize, we want all children on the continent to have the opportunity to learn with their hands, through activities, through projects. And our vision is that we'll see a continent that is sustainably transformed by generations of problem solvers. We want to influence a generation of youth that has the critical thinking skills and the problem solving ability to lead sustainable development of their country. So specifically what Penn is doing is we work with STEM teachers in Ghana. We do training for them, and we help them learn and explore ways that they can deploy hands-on activities in their classroom teaching. So we do this by leveraging low-cost, locally available resources that are found in every community in Ghana, and we align this content to the national curriculum. So whatever topic the teacher is supposed to teach, acids and bases, force and pressure, whatever is listed in the curriculum, our resource manuals and our videos help them see how they can bring that specific topic to life through practical activities. To give you a specific example, this is a picture of a lung and heart model that we found on a US educational website, which is about $200 for this model. And $200 is about 20 times more than what we've heard teachers say that they get per year to spend on science materials at best. So there's no way that we can wait to equip all Ghanaian schools, all African schools with this type of equipment, at least in our lifetime. And I'm interested in seeing a solution in my lifetime. So the alternative that we at Penn have offered is to use low cost, locally available resources. So for the same concept that you want to teach with that respiratory model that I showed on the previous slide, you can represent that with local materials, specifically a water bottle, balloon, plastic bag, and rubber band. And you can get students to do this themselves, build it themselves. Not only is it cheaper, but it's also more effective and engaging for students. And so we've developed hundreds of activities like this, drawing from existing ideas that other educators have built and localizing them to the Ghanaian context. Here are a few more examples taken from our resource manual. Again, all using local materials, sometimes using the students themselves as the local materials to get involved in exploring the concept. So sort of the philosophy behind this, the pedagogy behind this is to try and shift from a few things that currently exist in the system. We have the lecture method, the rote memorization method, and then this fixation on teaching resources that are procured from the Western world. And Penn's philosophy is to shift to the things that are on the right, which are constructivism, getting students to construct, to build their own understanding, which is described by Seymour Papert in the bottom line there, that learning occurs the most felicitously, the most enjoyably when students are constructing something tangible. And we're trying to get teachers to help students get their students to ask questions and not just feel like they're pushing information onto the students. So we're fostering inquiry-based learning. And then finally, the local connection is also really key. We need students to be able to see how science concepts apply to their own life. So when we talk about heat transfer, we bring in cooking, preparation of local foods like fufu and banku, and so that heat transfer isn't just something you read about in the textbooks and you see, an American person doing an experiment of in a picture, but it's something that's real for you. Here's a short video I'm going to play. Let's see if it comes through. Let me make sure my sound is shared too. Awesome. Okay.
Born out of MIT in the United States, Practical Education Network trains science teachers on how to utilize affordable, locally available materials in order to teach all of the topics in the national science curriculum in a practical way. No more chew and pour. It's hands-on, mind up. Practical science is proven to work. The Penn Impact Study has captured evidence of our effectiveness when students understand concepts rather than memorize facts. The exam scores naturally improve. See the Penn difference. Over the course of a full academic year, Penn schools improve their exam scores nearly twice as much as normal schools. Penn classrooms also cultivate positive attitudes towards science and students. This is the Penn difference.
My name is Lucy Quist, and I think that STEM is extremely important to Ghana's development. If we're running an experiment, we should use local goods and local products so that they can understand how STEM works in their context. And that is what Penn does, and I really appreciate Penn's work for that reason. Let's make it practical, let's make it contextual, let's make it real, so that it encourages understanding, practical understanding that will make our children make the most of STEM in their lifetimes.
When you are doing the practicals, it creates that room for the children to have feel of what you are teaching, which broadens their knowledge about the concept or whatever topic you are teaching. But compared to the normal classroom, sometimes they even sleep, because that one you are not engaging them in what you are doing. So I think the practical helps a lot.
I've worked with Penn even in reforming the basic school curriculum, and much of the ideas, what they have been implementing, have been incorporated into the curriculum. We are looking forward to continue to work with them in the training of teachers, and we are hoping that we'll be able to produce more practical-oriented teachers in science.
We are not doing science practicals. I used to forget the things so easily, but now, because we are doing science practicals, I can keep some of the things in my brain and even write them down to be able to remember them anytime we go to examination.
When we're not doing the science practicals, we don't understand exactly what the teacher is trying to say. But now that we have been doing the practicals, we get more information than before.
We can't do away with Penn. So it should be a pivot that will support teacher training and development, so that we can also see maximum improvement in teaching and learning process as far as science and maths is concerned.
Practical science works. Penn works. When students learn with their hands, their minds open up to the wonders of science. Choose Penn. Hands on, minds up.
So I hope you could all hear that. So hopefully that gives you a little feel of what it looks like on the fields. So just to recapture some of the results that were shared on the video, and by the way, these results were prepared by your very own host of this program. Jacob spent time in Ghana, and it was actually the researcher who drove this research study and the results I'm going to share. So I'm sure he could tell you more details for those of you who are interested. But basically what the research study showed when we sought out to see what type of impact does Penn's approach have on Ghanaian students. I mean, we know that this kind of stuff makes a difference in the Western world, but there's very little research around the impact of this kind of thing in Africa. And so this top set of bars shows in white the students who over the course of one academic year were not doing any practical work, just doing business as usual. And then in yellow, the exam scores of students whose teachers were regularly receiving hands-on practical science training. So you can see that the difference in the exam scores, which we used an old national exam, was about twice as much learning improvements for students who are actually undergoing regular hands-on activities. And then secondly, students' interest in science is captured in this bottom chart here. White is again the results of students who were just doing business as usual. And then in teal is the results over the course of one academic year for students whose teachers were regularly being trained in hands-on science. So you can see that there was a decrease in the self-report of students' interest in science over the course of the year if they were just doing business as usual. Whereas for those students who were getting to do practical stuff, their interest in science increased, and we saw the same trend over several questions that we asked. So pretty significant results by simply introducing these low-cost activities into the classroom. So we have contents, we have lots of interesting content, we have lots of, we have strong impact data to share now. And so really the challenge ahead for us is dissemination to get these ideas out to as many teachers and schools as we can. So we employ a train the trainer model at Penn. We select trainers who get a certificate to participate in our program. Their schools pay for them, or we have corporate sponsors that pay for them to attend. And then the trainers in turn teach their peers. For some numbers, we have 7 master trainers, another 90 or so local trainers who've come through the program and excelled and have therefore progressed to the trainer status. We've trained about 3,000 teachers directly and estimate that we've impacted more than 500,000 students. And these are the direct numbers. We've actually indirectly impacted a whole lot of teachers beyond this, especially through our work with the Ministry of Education's curriculum arm. We were able to infuse some of our practical content into the national curriculum, especially at the primary school and junior high school level, and help them prepare some training for all of the country's public school primary teachers on that. So there's been a flavor of our content that has reached virtually all of the primary school teachers in Ghana. This is a picture of Ghana that shows some of the workshops that we've run across the country. So Accra, the capital, is in the bottom here, and we've done a lot of programming there. We've done some in other regions, and right now and over the next few weeks, we're rolling out a series of training in the Ashanti region, Western region, and then Greater Accra as well. Here are some of the stellar teachers who've come through our program and have now become trainers, and they're all, happily showcasing some of their work that they've created, which is so different from just relying on the blackboard to teach. We have really positive response from both government stakeholders and teachers. Every time we do a training, we're reminded that we're on the right track. Teachers really appreciate the kinds of ideas that we're able to share because they feel realistic and they feel relevant for them compared to the few other trainings that they do get access to. These are some of our partners. MIT and Ashesi are university partners. The Peace Corps has enabled us to get some volunteers. We have some corporate sponsors, education foundations, and then some government institutions as well. This is the growing team that I have the privilege of getting to build and try my best to lead. This has been one of the most rewarding parts of this journey for me, is building this local team. Everybody on the team right now is either from Ghana or they're from Nigeria, but they live in Ghana. And our team size has doubled each of the last 2 years. And it's been a joy to bring these young, passionate people together to make a change in the system. These are some of our master trainers who, again, like I said, are teachers who've gone through the program and just skyrocketed. In case you're curious what we're doing in the midst of COVID, since our work has always been in person and really leveraging the rich experience that comes with doing hands-on stuff in person, we've challenged ourselves since March to shift our training online, which was not part of our original plan. Like I said, hands-on stuff is so rich of an experience in person, but we weren't willing to just sit around and wait an unknown amount of time while schools are closed, and they're still closed here and they still haven't announced any reopening date. So we've challenged ourselves to shift our training online. So this year has been a lot of learning for us as an organization. We've been creating videos of our activities. We've been we've been rolling out this training slowly but surely for about 300 teachers, like I mentioned, in about 3 different regions of the country. And we're using Zoom, we're using Google Classroom, and it's been a really interesting learning experience. It's not just a matter of translating the science content itself, it's also about orienting everybody to this new mode of experience of training that's online. It's a whole new thing, and most teachers are relying on their smartphone to access these things and may not have had experience using their phone to look up educational things before. So it's a lot of learning on our end, on the teacher's end, but I'm really optimistic that this unexpected turn of events for us is going to enable us to reach teachers across the continent much more rapidly than we would have otherwise. We actually get requests pretty frequently from people in other African countries asking for our program to be extended to Kenya, to Liberia, to Nigeria, and we just, haven't been able to just drop everything in Ghana, our small team, and go there physically. So I'm really hopeful for how this direction online will enable us to reach and address the massive challenge of STEM education on the African continent. To close, I'll just share with you our goal, our vision for the year 2025. So in the next 5 years, we aim that all teachers, at least all public school teachers in Ghana at the K-12 level would have been trained in practical pedagogies and that they would have confidence to deploy them on a regular basis. So we aim to see that shift away from chew and pour be realized in science classrooms in the next 5 years. It's a challenge, but it's one that we are fiercely pushing towards. And then, as I hinted on the previous slide, we're looking much beyond Ghana. This is a global challenge, but quite pronounced in sub-Saharan Africa. So we look to expand to the other West African countries, starting with the Anglophone ones. Probably Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Nigeria will be the first stops that we pilot in. And so we aim to pilot in those countries in the next 5 years as well. You can connect with us online on our various social media pages. My email is there if you'd like to reach out to me directly. Feel free. That's what I have for you. I would love to hear any questions or responses that you have.
Thank you, Heather. I guess I'll start off real quick. So I know that a lot of students that may be in the coming weeks or months that will be also watching this could be students who are, college age students who are maybe interested in doing international work in maybe the development sector, or just working internationally, maybe wanting to work for or start an NGO like you. Could you maybe go through that process of when you were really starting out? You mentioned it a little bit in your presentation, but any advice you would have to a graduating college student who really would want to get into this field of work, of international work like this? Maybe struggles and that you may have had during your own process.
Sure. I think a couple things come to mind immediately. One is that it's not a traditional path, right? So you can expect some pushback from people who may not understand what you're trying to do if you're trying to drop everything and go start an organization in another country. But if it's something that you're passionate about, that you feel called to do, then you should absolutely go for it. There's a lot of need for innovation in the developing world, and there's need for innovation. There's need for people who are committed to see the change happen. So if that is something that is on your heart, then go for it. Your innovation and your persistence is needed to shift the status quo in so many sectors. The second thing is that it's really hard to imagine the exact needs from afar. And so, as I shared in my presentation, I made my first trip to Ghana in 2011, but only moved here in 2016 fully. I'm not saying that you need that much time to figure it out, but it does take time on the ground, talking with stakeholders to really understand what the needs are. So our very first idea for what we should do to support STEM education in Africa was to create a website, with lots of lessons that people could go to and modify the lessons themselves on the websites, just because we recognize that there's so much information, there's so much content out there online. And so if we could just, put it in one place, it's easy for teachers to find, and then they can adjust it. But various, things came up as soon as we landed on the ground. That's like, okay, one, do schools have regular access to computers and internet? No. Are they used to using internet to modify lessons? No. So it's like suddenly our, grand idea didn't really make any sense at all. So that would be my second sort of thing that comes up, is be willing to spend a lot of time on the ground talking to people and have the humility to accept when you have to change your approach. If you're coming to make a change in the developing world, you're going to be entering systems and realities that have been the case for many years for many people. And so the people on the ground know what the reality is and what the needs are. So you have to be willing to spend time talking with them and changing your ideas.
Great, thanks, Heather. Any other questions from our strong but mighty audience? All right. Well, if there's no further questions, we will end it here. So Heather, I want to thank you again for adding your quota to the Washington State University Global Learning Department, where we're trying to foster learning for our WSU students. And hopefully it's looking like 2021 is getting to be the year where things and international travel will open up a lot more again. And so hopefully this can be a catalyst for some to think about as they travel internationally. So thank you very much for your time. And for anybody else now or in the future watching this video, make sure that you check out Practical Education Network, and you can always reach Heather at the email and the contact information shared here. So thank you.
Yeah, feel free to reach out at any time.
All right, take care, everybody.